Episode 768. Larton's bone wings finally retracted completely. Kudo couldn't resist sneaking a peek and saw that Invincible Most Handsome had been sent tumbling across the ground by that wing strike, truly a miserable sight. In that instant, Larton retracted his bone wings and twisted his body, his long tail sweeping around behind him.
Exactly.
Chris Bean was pumped. He knew full well that a knight's toughness meant a single wing strike wouldn't finish him off, but add that tail sweep to the mix, that just might do the trick. After all, this was a 10-player dungeon, and Woody Zui Junlong's gear was basically clearing level for it. He'd picked up the dragon guarding axe from the ancient dragon abyss, but since it was a two-handed weapon, he had to swap out his shield. When it came to defense, not having a shield made all the difference in the world. The thing he feared most was Xin Lu tossing him a heel, but Kuidu had already accounted for that. Just as Wudi Zui Shuilong made a misstep, Kuido's positioning also slipped slightly. In that instant, he stepped into the ancient dragon's attack range, and he deliberately pretended not to notice, making no move to block with his shield. The party only had one cleric. This wasn't even a question. The MT mattered more than any DPS. He was actually capable of coming up with so many schemes in an instant. Kuidu couldn't help but feel a little impressed with himself. Watching his health slowly recover, Crispy Bean flashed a sinister grin. Sure enough, at that very moment, he could only keep the healing on himself. Meanwhile, over by Invincible Handsome, Ralton's tail had already swept in. The boss's aggro was still on Chris Bean, so this strike was primarily aimed at him. Unfortunately, Invincible Most Handsome happened to be standing right there, making him the first to take the hit. Chris Bean certainly didn't want to miss this scene. He stared without blinking, even continuing his malicious calculations. If this tail sweep didn't finish Handsome and Unrivaled off, then next. Kuidu had just thought of this when his mind suddenly hit a snag, because he saw with his own eyes that Wudi Zujunlong's rolling was so swift he had actually squeezed through the only gap between himself and Ralden's sweeping tail in that split second of no delay. He came to a stop right behind Ralden's back. By the time he straightened up, Invincible Most Handsome's Dragon Guard axe had already swung out, and then he followed up with a flurry of attack skills. Every move flowed into the next, so when he rolled back into position, that whole tumble didn't look clumsy at all. The scene of him sweeping through with his tail and then darting through the gap was so thrilling it made you want to replay it and watch it 100 times.
How is that possible?
Chris Bean's jaw was practically hanging open.
That was just a coincidence, right?
He figured as much, because under normal circumstances, even this kind of dodge wouldn't have been fast enough. But at that moment, Invincible Most Handsome was actually knocked to the ground by Ralton's strike, rolling away faster than a player's own rapid dodge roll. It was by borrowing this created speed that he managed to pull off such a perilous evasion. Crispy Bean hoped it was just a coincidence, but the facts seemed determined to prove otherwise. Invincible Most Handsome rolled and immediately followed up with an attack, his movements so calm and composed. Who would believe he'd just scraped through a narrow escape by sheer dumb luck? That calmness came from confidence. He knew he could dodge that strike. That whole chain of rolls wasn't luck. He deliberately used Ralton's attack to reposition himself in one smooth motion.
There's actually a technique like that?
The pressure on Chris Bean only mounted, while the rest were left stunned by the sight. Yi Shu followed up with an attack right after Wushang Zujunlang rolled away. The others were so stunned they froze for a moment. Even Xin Lu, who should have immediately healed Wushang Zujunlang, was shocked into a delayed reaction.
Phew, that was close.
Once she came to her senses, she sent a reply to Invincible Most Handsome while marveling at the situation.
Haha, having a cleric really makes a difference.
Yi Shu kept attacking as he spoke, watching Boundless Bravery's health slowly recover. Chris Beans gritted his teeth, but for the moment he couldn't think of any new schemes. Was he really just going to quietly finish out the match like this? This can't be happening. Kudo kept glancing around, hoping to spot an opening, But by now, Wudi Zui Junlang had circled behind Ralden, one in front, one in back. The ancient dragon's body was massive. He couldn't even see the guy anymore. How was he supposed to scheme? Chris Bean was half-heartedly tanking the monster, but the others were fired up, especially the guys who'd grabbed weapons from the ancient dragon abyss. They were going all out on DPS, trying to leave everyone in the dust and chase down the targets ahead. For a moment, the damage meter was a heated race, everyone jostling for position. Aside from Kyudo and Wudi Zhu Junlang holding the top 2 spots, and Xinlu firmly anchored at the bottom, the other 7 were locked in a drag race, jockeying for position. They had split into 2 groups, though. A clear gap had opened between those with new weapons and those without. As for the commotion below, Chris Bean couldn't be bothered to pay it any mind. His eyes were fixed on only one name: Invincible Most Handsome. That name of his was always hanging right behind him, looking like it could overtake him at any moment. Kyudo couldn't kill Wudi Zui Junlang, so he had to crush him in other areas. But no matter how he fought, he just couldn't pull ahead in damage output. The other side was playing with him like a cat toying with a mouse, close enough to catch, but refusing to strike, just patiently trailing behind, as if mocking him. Kyudo's eyes were practically spitting fire, his emotions surging, but his movements grew more and more chaotic. Always picking whichever skill hits the hardest, and using it right away. But you can't just stack high damage skills and call it a rotation. To really push your DPS, you need to manage cooldowns efficiently, while also keeping an eye on random procs and buffs that amplify your damage output. Just standing there and spamming skills? That's what they call brainless DPS. Players who can actually dish out high damage, their mechanics aren't necessarily any simpler than the MTs. Chris Bean's high damage output was really just a matter of top-tier gear. If it came down to actual technique, he'd be a lot less impressive. Now he had to grit his teeth and obsess over his damage output, constantly trying one adjustment after another. Not only was his DPS rhythm unstable, but even the aggro he should have held steady was slipping. He was so focused on competing with Ishu that he completely failed to notice the other damage dealers were now locked in their own escalating rivalry, pushing their output higher and higher, and sending their aggro skyrocketing right along with it. And because they trusted him as their lead MT, they had completely forgotten to manage their own aggro.